Hi, this is Danny Bailey. I am going to be doing some recording tomorrow to start the new recordings once a month. And before that, there was something I just wanted to get off my chest. There was a while back I was hanging out with Andy Jowett, and I was talking about the new songs from Hillsong United, Wonder, the album Wonder. And I just was going on and on and on. And he said, "You know what? You should just make a podcast of this because I would listen to that." So I was like, sure, yeah, I probably should do that because more than one person might enjoy hearing my thoughts on the new songs as they came out in May or June this year. It's been a few months, maybe it was April. Anyway, it was 2017, and the new Hillsong United Wonder is out. The song Wonder has been playing on the radio lately, and it was one of the two preview songs that they put out with the new album Wonder, and also Splinters and Stones, which is track 5. So I just want to briefly breeze through the tracks, and I'll put in the info below how you can go listen to the Hillsong United channel and go listen to the songs, pull up the lyrics, because that's really important thing, because sometimes with the Australian accent it's kind of hard to hear exactly what all the words are, but it's really textured, and so I'll just give my thoughts on each of the tracks briefly, and then you can either as your list either in between as I'm explaining them, go listen to the song, or feel free to just go listen to the whole album now, and then come back when you're finished and you want to hear what some of my thoughts are. I mean, I don't know. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. But you might hear something different after hearing me explain the song. Then when you go listen to it, you go, "Oh, that's what that was about." Anyway, this is just one guy's perspective on it, so it's not totally authoritative or anything in terms of what they actually meant by writing the songs. But I definitely got a lot out of it, so that's why I wanted to give some feedback, and just to get people excited about new music that's coming out. And it's not totally even songs that I might even play at mass, because some of them are just so um, sprawling is the term I usually use. So get the lyrics as you listen, and you can really judge from there. So track 1 is Wonder. It starts off with sort of the blind man coming to see, which we know in Jesus' parables is in his stories. It's not just about physical blindness becoming physical sight, but it's when you used to not see the truth, but then you finally found it, and you can see what through God's eyes, sort of see the way that God sees things. So sort of when He opens your eyes to the truth. And then it goes into when you come out of the water, that's baptism, obviously. And so anybody who has chosen to be baptized, because they weren't infants as they're baptized, but they come up to a point in their life where they realize, like, yeah, I want to become Catholic, or I want to become Christian, I want to get baptized. And so they made that choice and come out of the waters of baptism. And even those of us who didn't choose our baptism originally, I think many of us who've had those moments where we sort of leaned into the faith and said, "This is what I believe," and that's sort of a confirmation of your baptism. Either it was at your actual confirmation, the sacrament, or another time when you come out of the waters and leave your old life behind. That's baptism. And it also makes me think of this song, Wonder, just the wonder of a child, just seeing the whole world. And I've been seeing my little nephew running around, exploring things, seeing things for the first time. Everything's so huge to them. You look up into the sky and see an airplane, and he thinks that is so awesome every time. He points up at the sky to see every time those airplanes go by. We sort of get into our routines, and we kind of think, yeah, another airplane, that's just business as usual, that's just life as we know it. But really, that is it is quite a wonder to think that we can be flying around in the sky. And there's so many things that God reveals to us every day that if we stop and looked and realize the wonder of creation and of what He's done, is a big deal, and we don't often give that as much credit as we should. So that's why it's such a great song to kind of like keep your eyes open and remember that moment when you confirm your faith in Jesus Christ. So that's Wonder. And then track 2 is called Shadow Step, which I think is a funny song because it's a peculiar phrase. I don't know if I had thought of it before, shadow step, but I guess I guess in maybe it's an Australian thing, but I guess in our in America we might say someone is shadowing you, like job shadow, or they're walking in your footsteps. I mean, that's sort of the imagery that they're getting across. So I don't know if that's a figure of speech over there, or if they're just sort of like inventing it for this song. But if you shadow someone, you like follow them around, see everything that they do. Presumably, you want to have that job someday, or you want to be like that person. So you go take mental notes, see how they do things, see what their challenges and what their daily life is like, and then eventually you'll be the one doing it yourself. So that's sort of like discipleship, is like job shadowing Jesus, because we walk in his footsteps and sort of see how he does things. If we study the Gospels and we follow all those stories where Jesus was meeting people, and we think, what would I do in that situation? Well, Jesus gives a good example, and we have to follow that. And just sort of like if you lean into the love that you have for Jesus, and you just want to be close to him, you just like follow him wherever he goes, and you really stay close to that. I mean, that's just the spiritual life. But we also learn from this song that God has always been there, like following our footsteps. We wouldn't have thought of that if you're going to job shadow someone, they're following you around. No, we usually think that you're following the person around, but really, all this time, in the song it says all this time, that God was right there following in our footsteps, even when we weren't following closely to his. He was right there, step for step, with us. So that's such a great sort of like double-sided imagery for this song. Shadow step is like we were, as disciples, we're supposed to be shadow stepping, job shadowing Jesus, but really all this time he was right there in our footsteps, shadowing us when we weren't paying attention. Track 3 is called Future Marches In, and I really like this song. But yeah, it's another one where it's the wording of everything is so tricky. But I think what's really talking about, even though it's kind of poetic language, the future marches in. So what does that mean? I think that they're talking about how, for people of faith, for people that have hope in what God is wanting to do with the world, that the future is bright. We don't always get that when we, people say, oh, look at the news, there's all these bad things happening, the world's going down. But if you look at it through the perspective of sort of like the long game perspective of Christianity, that Christianity has survived this long, and it in some ways it's growing, in other ways it's shrinking, but it's not gone. That's the thing about God and his promise, is that it's not going to fail, and if it hasn't for 2,000 years, it probably won't for another 2,000 or more. And that the future is bright for those who believe. It hinges on our participation, is what I wrote. I'm an important member of the kingdom of God, important asset to God's kingdom, and I can choose to live that out, or I can choose to sort of ignore it. But for us to have a bright future, it really takes each person sort of stepping up to the role that God has already given them in their life, to keep on pursuing that dream, pursuing that life of discipleship, and part of that is to sing, and part of that is to worship God. And so the song sort of like takes it to that place where it says, if you have a breath, lift up your voice and sing. I mean, that's sort of an analogy for our entire life. It's like, if you have a breath, why don't you give your life as a song to the Lord and to people that are in need of your help? And so like that is just another way of thinking about discipleship, that the future is bright if we take charge and we live up to the promise that God's already placed in each of us, and He's given us the breath of life. So if we share that, then we'll be bringing life to other people, and that is a bright future. So when the future marches in, that's what they're talking about, I think. It calls us free. Song number 4 is So Will I, and then parenthetical, 100 billion times. And there's always got to be that one just amazing ballad. There are probably like 4 in this, or 6 in this particular album. But this is one of those where it hits you like a ton of bricks. And go listen to it, see what you think. But I think it really captures the majestic nature of creation that God has created. All of this, and all the complex living things on this planet, but also the complex, the stars everywhere. The 100 billion stars is sort of like the starting point that it goes with. But it also kind of attests to this attitude of faith in science that I think Catholics can have. Is sort of like, can't you look out at creation and just see how majestic it is, and realize that it's not just meant to be, that our destiny is not for oblivion, but that our destiny is to hope and to have eternity with God. So that is sort of the majestic wonder, because sort of like fitting the theme of the album that each of us can live into. Anyway, go listen to the song, because I don't have anything more to say than what is already in there. It talks about 8 billion, seeing God's life 8 billion ways, and obviously that's relating to the 8 billion human beings that you could meet if you met everyone on the planet right now. I can see God's heart 8 billion different ways, because He has given the breath of life to each individual human being. And so, sorry, that's my laundry, it's beeping, but I'm gonna keep going. But that's one of the great images in this song, is that there's 8 billion ways to see God's face, and it's in each of the human beings that you encounter. So hopefully 8 billion people will eventually be singing this song, is what I've said. So let me get to track 5, which is Splinters and Stones. This was the other sort of preview track that they put out when they were releasing the album. So they sort of had Wonder on the one hand, which was the upbeat anthem song. And then they had a track 5, Splinters and Stones. This was really where you get to I'm guessing the song is by Joel Houston because he's singing it, but it's just one of those really personal songs about it's just like a telltale song of a relationship with Jesus. And he walks with Jesus to the cross. He wasn't really there, but he has read about it. He knows Jesus, so he is able to speak to that truth. What was it like for Jesus carrying our burdens, and that even God is faithful. What to say? All this time, that God's been faithful all this time, and that He carried our burdens, and that's sort of like the point of the song. And it sort of takes a nice twist where he sort of speaks of it like, there's a time when I was going to be stoned to death by the Pharisees, like the woman caught in adultery, but Jesus told them all to let go. So that's kind of a cool way that he introduced that into this story, that it's very personal, that that Jesus has touched his life in that way, that he feels like he was right there. Track 6 is Glimmer in the Dust, and again, it's another one of those ones where I go, is this a saying in Australia? Is this something that they say? Glimmer in the dust. Maybe we say, because when we say diamond in the rough, and maybe that they meant that it was different than that. But that's sort of the feeling I get from this song, is that we're like a diamond in the rough, and it has a fun little wordplay in this song where he says, "I was lost in the moment," where she says, "I was lost in the moment." And that's sort of like all of us as we get caught up in the world, as we get caught up in our daily life, like lost in the moment. You don't pay attention to God's presence in the present moment, and you just sort of get lost in the moment. So that happens to all of us, and so she starts off the song by saying, like, I was lost in the moment. Um, but then as it sort of turns around into verse 2, or the other verse, she says, I was. Then it comes in with the guy singing. He says, I was found in the moment, and exploding in light. And so you think of any of those times where you look at the Hillsong concerts where like the lights flash and the music goes big and everybody just lets out a cry of praise. And so that's what it reminded me of, and I'm sure that's what they were thinking of, where people, they're lost in their lives, but then they come to a worship concert and their heart finally, just opens up, and you're found in the moment. Instead of being lost in the moment, you were found in a moment of worship, and God found you. And it's not like the music saved you; it's that God has the power to save, and it's in those moments where we allow our hearts to be opened up that God can jump right in. He found in the song he talks about glimmer in the dust, and I feel like that's the diamond in the rough. So like all of us, we are, we learn from Genesis that we were formed by the clay of the ground, and then God breathed into us the breath of life. So we belong to this earth, but we also have something in us that's not from this earth. We have God's breath of life in us, and so we belong here, but we kind of don't belong here. Like our eternal place is not here, but with God. So even though we are dust, even though we are crummy, you could say, we also have a divine destiny with God, and so that's the glimmer in the dust. Track 7 is the greatest of these. Greatest of these is love, right? That's 1 Corinthians 13. And this is another one of those songs where it's just really made personal. They've taken the scriptures and they just like laid it out on the table and they said, okay, and then this is how it applies to my life. And they really said it in words that, are really coming from their heart rather than, love is patient. It's like, it seems like really robotic if you just say it the way it is right out of the book, but the way they've sort of formed this song into something really beautiful, and that it's, I could speak like the angels, prophesy knowing full, and all of that, and that he really made the connections between like the meaning of that scripture and how deep it really goes to, and that's not just about a wedding or something. It's really about loving God, but yeah, also our neighbor, but. It's all loud nothing if I don't have love, and I think it's always funny how I heard that song and they sort of hesitate to get to that word love. If I don't have love, I think that's kind of a fun elongation because you can sort of rest in that moment. Anyway, the next song is track 8, Shape of Your Heart, and I was just going to write a note on this, but I wrote a lot. Shape of Your Heart. It's another song where it's like really poetic. What's the shape of God's heart? God's love is a huge mystery, but when you get a glimpse, you might see the shape of his heart. And that's where the margins collide. That's what they talk about in the song. What's where the margins collide? Well, because in the incarnation, that's where the divinity and humanity meet. So it's like the margin of divinity and the margin of humanity, where they meet, that's the incarnation, that's Jesus. It's the place where those two meet, it's the margin. And also what we call the margins of society, where the poor, the outcast, the forgotten, that's where Jesus went to minister, and he commanded us to do the same. He said, whatever you did for the least of these, basically whatever you did for those on the margins, you did for me. And it's crossing the line in order to get there, because usually we say like, well, nobody goes over there, nobody talks to those people. But, Jesus went there, we're supposed to go there, where your love crossed the line, and he crossed the line by becoming human. And so we should also cross the line to go help people that are on the margins. He's already crossed that line by coming here, and so that's the inspiration for us too. Now we see the shape of your heart. It's where the margins collide. Pretty cool. But that's tough. It's tough to sing that at church if you don't give people sort of like what it means first. Track 9 is Not Today. and the song is just fun. You know, it's about rebuking the devil. So what's wrong with what's wrong with that? And just sort of the power in the name of Jesus to rebuke the devil and any anxieties that we have. You know, if we lean on the promise that we have, you know, we have the promise of eternity, and you know, Jesus' yoke is easy and his burden is light, and that we can lay our cares on him. I mean, that's more exciting than the despair that the devil often tries to put on our hearts, or to feel overburdened or to feel overstressed, and that like there's nobody that's going to be able to help you, because that's actually not true. Jesus is able to help us with any burden that we are carrying, if we turn to him. And sometimes that takes rebuking the devil in order to do that. So if you tell the devil, not today, that's what this song is about. So it's pretty fun. Then we get to track 10, and this begins the sort of the final three movements of this album, or I guess it's the final single movement of the album, where it really kind of goes into these three really deep ballads. And when I first got to this point in the album, I was kind of distracted, but when I got here, I realized something big is happening now, and then it extended for those three songs. So Life is the 10th song. So what's this life about? It's a song about total surrender. More than my lungs need oxygen. And it's just really simple lyrics, but go look it up as you're listening, because sometimes it's hard to hear through the worship sort of it's very like ethereal in the song. But if you go if you go look up the lyrics as you're listening, you'll be able to hear what all the words are. And just that really simple prayer: take my heart, take my soul, take my mind, and I will give my life, give my all, give my voice to follow you, or whatever all those words are. Just the really simple prayer of surrender. That's what this song is about. And again, it would be a tough song to worship with if you didn't give people sort of the starting point of like, what's this song about? What's it mean? What are all these words? But yeah, your life in mine, and I give my life to follow you. More than my lungs need oxygen. Really powerful. Track 11 is sort of part 2 of this 3-part ending movement here. It's called Rain/Rain. Rain, A-I-N, and Rain, E-I-G-N. So yeah, when God's love falls like rain, but it's also the reign of God, you know, God, the King of the universe. So that's sort of the wordplay. You fall like rain. And they sort of use this little kid in this song. It's like, you know, what's love? Oh, wow. Love just means love. And, you know, sort of like that childlike wonder sort of comes back again as another bit of a theme to the album of wonder. And the word wonder is even used in this song. And, you know, this song really hit me when, you know, this is quite an aside, but this is what this song really reminds me of is, you know, it's funny that this album, Wonder, came out right around the same time as Wonder Woman, the movie, with Gal Gadot. And I went and I saw the movie, and then as I was in the car, like riding home, I was listening to Hillsong United, Wonder. And I got to this song and I realized, like, wow, this is the emotion that I was feeling during the movie. Because, I mean, you can skip this part if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want it to be spoiled. But sort of like the hinge point at the end of the movie is that Diana realizes that the whole time she's not a human. She's not even one of the Themyscians. She's a divinity. She is a deity. And that's where all of her like cosmic powers come from. She has all these superpowers, and you know, at the beginning of the movie, you're sort of just led to believe like, oh well, she's tough because you know she was raised with the Amazonians, and so she can just do all this stuff. But you realize that actually it's because she has the divine heritage, and so like all of her special powers, like she's actually a superpowered like a superhero deity. And so she's not a human. And so sort of the villain tries to turn that on her and say like, look, you defeated all these humans. Like, they're so puny. Like, why would you ever even care about them? Like, you're not even one of them. In fact, you're a deity. Why would you even care about humanity? You just squash them like they're bugs, and you don't even have to love them. But her point is that, even though even though she discovers that she's a deity, she's not one of the humans. She still feels love for them, and sort of that realization played out on the big screen was, I thought, a really awesome apologetic moment for Christianity, because like that's a lot like what our God is like for us, because he he we know that Jesus is fully human and fully divine, and that God would enter our space in order to show us how much he loves us, and he would sacrifice himself for us out of love, and that he didn't have to be human, he didn't have to come here, but he chose to, and it's because of his great love for the human race, each and every one of us. And so that was sort of played out, though, kind of confusingly in Wonder Woman movie, but I feel like that is the theological point that gets shown in this song, because it shows like God's great power, that falls like rain, fire and thunder, the mountains melt like wax before you. It's like, how could he ever love us if he has all this cosmic mighty power? What kind of a person has that kind of power and still loves? Well, I thought it was great to have Wonder Woman as a great illustration of that, sort of like two things coming together. It's like this supreme power and then also love, and how she, even when she found out that she was being deceived the whole time, she still chose love. And that even when she found out that she was like more powerful than humans, she didn't want to destroy them. She didn't feel like she was above. She felt like she still wanted to love. So that's what this song makes me think of, that God's great love for us really shows his mighty power. And the last song is track 12. It's Water to Wine. And of course it's a reference to the wedding of Cana, where Jesus literally turned water into wine. And then the second verse talks about blood and water, mercy flowing from your side. So that's the cross. That's the other place where water happens. It's like water to wine, blood to water. There's this interesting imagery going on here. And we know that, and what they mention in the song is like going from water to wine. It's kind of like our like regular lives and our sort of human nature, and like kind of we talked about this before, like if you just get lost in the moment, you live your life real normal, and you just kind of forget about God. But then you come to the moment where you like realize, I want to live a spiritual life. I want to pray. I want to enter into something divine. So you ask God, turn this water into wine, where like water is just regular being, but wine has to do with, a feast. It has to do with something rich. It has to do with something refined. It has to do with, the Last Supper. It has to do with, just that abundance. And so if you think that water is just plain, but wine has to do with something greater, then you could think that, when he says, turn this water into wine, he's not just saying, like, make my party better, like it's a wedding feast. He's saying, turn all my regular thoughts into divine thoughts. Turn this regular me into a more holy version of me. And so, yeah, the second reflection is about blood and water flowing from mercy, flowing from your side. And I think the Catholics really picked up on this as we think about the divine mercy. And I wonder if the Hillsong folks were reflecting on the divine mercy or if they knew about it as they were writing this song, because it's so closely woven in to what we know about the divine mercy. Blood and water flowing, mercy on the side of Jesus on the cross, and that water is the water of baptism, and so Anyway, that's what I was thinking of as I was listening to this album over the last few months. So I hope that this helps a lot of people to listen to Hillsong United Wonder. So go get it. Go listen to it. You can listen to it on YouTube if you want to, or you can just purchase it and then you can listen to it anywhere. I really like it. Some of these songs I really want to play more at Mass, and it's just going to take some time to figure out like which ones are really going to make sense. But if not at Mass, then wherever praise and worship music is done. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you made it to this point, I'm proud of you, and may God bless you, and may you continue to grow in faith, maybe through music. And I will see you all soon with my first recording of the monthly new songs.